Right now, somewhere between Tokyo and Osaka, a train carrying over 1,300 people is traveling at a speed of 285 kilometers per hour. It will arrive at its destination within seconds of its scheduled time. It has never, not once in over 60 years of operation, killed a single passenger in an accident. And it costs roughly £50 million per mile to build. On the other hand, somewhere between London and Birmingham, construction crews are working on a railway that is projected to cost £396 million per mile, and it won't open until at least 2030. The same country that invented the steam locomotive, the same country that gave the world the very concept of a passenger railway, is now building what experts call one of the most expensive, most troubled rail projects in human history. This is not a story about speed. This is a documentary about choices, about what happens when a nation inherits its infrastructure instead of designing it, and about the staggering, compounding, generational price of doing nothing. Let's explore the Shinkansen technology versus British legacy tracks, the $200 billion maintenance trap. To understand why the Shinkansen exists, let's take a throwback to the year 1945. Back then, Japan had just surrendered, ending the Second World War. The aftermath of the war had left Tokyo in ruin and devastated the country's economy. National infrastructures like roads, factories, and buildings were almost entirely gone, and the government's priority was rebuilding from nothing. But within a decade, Japan's economy roared back. By 1954, it had recovered to pre-war levels in absolute terms. And with that recovery came a new problem: congestion. Apparently, the Tokaido main line connecting Tokyo and Osaka was operating at full capacity. Passengers and freight traffic were overwhelming the system. This resulted in a 6.5-hour journey from Tokyo to Osaka by rail, and the demand kept growing. As the demand for transport infrastructure grew, it was only natural for Japan to traditionally add more tracks alongside the existing ones. But the existing network was narrow gauge, with a width of 1,067 millimeters, a design which was borrowed from British engineers when Japan built its first railway in 1872. In 1955, Shinji Sogo, the fourth president of Japanese National Railways, called back a recently retired engineer, Hideo Shima, from his post at Sumitomo Metal Industries. Shima had helped design Japan's most advanced steam locomotives. He had also worked in aircraft design during the Second World War. Sogo asked him to design an entirely new railway from scratch. His new design will use the standard gauge tracks of 1,435 millimeters, which is the international benchmark, built exclusively for high-speed passenger trains, completely separate from the existing network. The vision was not to break land speed records. It was to move enormous volumes of people between Japan's two largest cities, quickly, reliably, and frequently. Shima wanted to reimagine what a railway fundamentally was. In May 1956, the feasibility study began, and 2 years later, the government gave approval. Construction started in April 1959, with the team given a 5-year time frame to build something the world had never seen. But there was one problem. You see, almost nobody believed it would work. Because in the 1950s, the prevailing view, in Japan and globally, was that railways were obsolete. The United States was building motorways. Airlines were expanding. Cars were proliferating. And the Western world had concluded that the humble train was a relic. Furthermore, their proposed budget of 194.8 billion yen was already being questioned. To make the project financially impossible for the government to reverse, Sogo devised a plan. He would secure a loan from the World Bank, making the Japanese government internationally accountable. After going back and forth, the loan was approved. $80 million, roughly 15% of the estimated cost. It was enough to lock the Japanese government in. Construction pressed forward through 3,000 bridges and 67 tunnels, carving a largely straight and level path through Japan's notoriously rugged terrain. The costs overran, almost doubling from 194.8 billion yen to 380 billion yen. The overruns were so severe that both Sogo and Shima resigned before the project was even finished in 1963. And yet, on October 1st, 1964, 9 days before the opening ceremony of the Tokyo Olympics, the Tokaido Shinkansen carried its first passengers. The journey from Tokyo to Osaka was, at this moment, cut down from 6.5 hours to 4 hours. What separated the Shinkansen from every other railway on Earth was not simply speed. It was the philosophy behind every design decision. The key principle was separation. This means that the Shinkansen would not share its tracks with anything. No slow freight trains, no stopping services, no road crossings. It is entirely grade separated, entirely fenced, with legal penalties for trespassing. This was the foundation that made everything else possible. Due to its dedicated tracks, the trains could be lighter. Apparently, European and American trains were built with heavy, reinforced bodies to survive collisions with slower trains and road vehicles. But the Shinkansen, with no such interactions possible, could be designed around aerodynamics and weight reduction instead. Lighter trains meant less wear on the track, and less wear on the track meant lower maintenance costs. Another important advantage of having dedicated tracks is that the signaling could be absolute. The Automatic Train Control System, ATC, managed every aspect of train spacing. This is why not a single passenger has been killed in a derailment or collision on the full standard Shinkansen network since October 1st, 1964. The system was also designed with distributed power, electric motors beneath every carriage, not a single locomotive at the front. This spread the train's weight evenly across the rails, further reducing wear and eliminating the wheel slip speed limitations of a conventional locomotive-hauled train. By fiscal 2023, the Tokaido Shinkansen alone was carrying 161 million passengers per year, more than 6.5 billion in total since opening. It now carries up to 445,000 people on peak days, up to 16 trains per hour in each direction. Across the world, the contrast could not be starker. As we already know, Britain invented the railway. They achieved this milestone when the Stockton and Darlington line opened in 1825. By 1914, they had established over 20,000 miles of track and 120 competing private companies. At that time, their rail line was the most extensive railway network on Earth. And that is precisely the problem. Apparently, the tracks that carry British trains today were not designed for speed. They were designed by Victorian-era private companies, in competition with each other, with no national plan, no standardization of approach, and no vision for what a railway might need to do 150 years later. The rail alignments are curved because horses and early steam engines needed gentle gradients and couldn't handle the tunneling required for straight routes. The rail tracks are shared with passenger trains running alongside freight trains, and slow services alongside faster ones, constrained by the weakest link in each timetable. The system was built for the 1840s and has been patched, upgraded, and argued over ever since. After nationalization in 1948, the 1963 Beeching Report proposed closing over 5,000 miles of track and 2,363 stations. As a result, the network shrank from 17,500 to about 11,000 miles between 1963 and 1975. Then, under the Railways Act of 1994, British Rail was broken apart. Infrastructure went to Railtrack. Operations went to franchised private companies. What followed was fragmentation, underinvestment, and a series of crashes. After the Hatfield disaster in 2000, caused by rail cracking from microscopic fatigue fractures, Railtrack imposed over 1,200 emergency speed restrictions across the network. The company collapsed and was replaced by Network Rail, a state-owned body underwritten by the taxpayer. That brings us to the question, what does all this history cost? You see, between 2019 and 2024 alone, Network Rail spent £67.4 billion to operate, maintain, renew, and enhance the national rail infrastructure. That is more than £13 billion per year, and it is not enough. Meanwhile, annual leasing and maintenance costs for over 15,000 rolling stock units exceed £4.1 billion, consuming nearly 1/3 of all operator budgets. The unit cost of conventional track renewals has increased by 7% per year in real terms since 2014 to 15. This brings us to HS2 and to the number at the heart of this story. When High Speed 2 was first formally proposed in 2009 and launched in 2012, it promised to transform Britain's rail capacity. A new high-speed line connecting London to Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds. A chance at last to build something dedicated and modern, like the Shinkansen. The projected cost in 2012 was approximately £20.5 billion in 2019 prices. Then, the costs started to skyrocket, with Phase 1 alone rising to over £56.6 billion. Phase 1 covers 134 miles at £396 million per mile, making it one of the most expensive railways ever built anywhere on Earth. For context, Japan's Hokkaido Shinkansen, built through challenging terrain with nearly half of it tunneled, was constructed at approximately £50 million per mile. France's Tours to Bordeaux TGV line, built in the mid-2000s, cost around £32 to £40 million per mile. Italy's Naples to Bari high-speed connection, at approximately £165 million per mile, would still be less than half the cost of HS2. The original full HS2 program, including all phases to Manchester and Leeds, carried a total forecast cost of up to £108.9 billion in 2015 prices. When HS2's northern legs were cancelled by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in October 2023, sunk costs had already accumulated. By the time of the 2025-26 government review, HS2 Limited had already spent £38.8 billion on construction and a further £3.8 billion on property. Major contractors, Balfour Beatty and Vinci, had received more than £5 billion each under controversial cost-plus contracts that guaranteed their profits regardless of actual performance. But what went wrong? The procurement was fragmented, tendered in 3 separate parts, with different contractors responsible for different segments. In France, standard practice is to build from both ends simultaneously, using the newly laid track itself to move heavy machinery, cutting both cost and time. On HS2, different contractors had to coordinate with each other across segment boundaries, creating expensive access roads and alignment risks. Ricardo Ferreras of Ferrovial, one of the contractors, put it plainly at an industry conference in 2022. The cost per kilometer in the UK is far higher than in Europe. The reason is that, in Spain, the government handles all permits and environmental consents before awarding the contract, so contractors can focus on building. In Britain, contractors must navigate the process themselves, adding enormous risk premiums to every bid. Fast forward to date, Britain is now attempting something it has not done since 1948. It is rebuilding its railways as a unified public system. Under the Passenger Railway Services Act 2024, the UK began bringing private rail franchises back under state control as their contracts expire. South Western Railway became the first to be renationalised on May 25, 2025. By the end of 2027, all remaining franchises are expected to follow. A new Railways Bill, introduced to Parliament in November 2025, will create Great British Railways, a single public body responsible for both track and trains, headquartered in Derby. The government says it will save £150 million per year in franchise fees alone, simplify timetabling, and end decades of fragmentation. Although these ambitions are significant, whether the delivery will match them is the question an entire generation of British commuters is waiting to have answered. Meanwhile, in Japan, engineers are already building what comes next. The Chuo Shinkansen, which is a maglev line that will connect Tokyo to Nagoya at 500 kilometers per hour and eventually to Osaka, has been under construction since 2011. On April 21, 2015, a prototype set a world speed record of 603 kilometers per hour on the Yamanashi test line. The line will reduce the Tokyo to Osaka journey to just 67 minutes. Its opening, originally planned for 2027, has been delayed to at least 2034. The superconducting magnets that levitate the train above its guideway eliminate contact with the rail entirely, removing the fundamental constraint of friction that has governed railways since Stephenson's rocket in 1829. It is, in a way, the Shinkansen story all over again. A group of engineers looking at a system that has reached its limits and choosing to start again from first principles. Britain invented the concept of the public railway. Japan built the concept of the modern railway. The gap between those two things is what we have been examining here. It is not simply a gap in speed, it is a gap in approach. Japan looked at its constraints in the 1950s and chose to build an entirely new system, cleanly separated from what came before. Britain has been trying to improve what it inherited, incrementally, expensively, and with deeply mixed results. The Shinkansen was built over budget by people who ultimately lost their jobs. It opened to a public that wasn't sure it needed it, and it has since carried over 10 billion passengers without a single fatality. On the other hand, HS2 was conceived with similar ambitions. Whether it ultimately delivers similar results, or becomes one of the most expensive cautionary tales in infrastructure history, will depend on whether the lessons of Japan's great experiment are finally, properly learned. The countries that will define transport for the 21st century are not the ones that most carefully preserve the infrastructure of the 19th. They are the ones willing to start again. Let us know your thoughts on our video about Shinkansen technology versus British legacy tracks, the $200 billion maintenance trap, in the comments section.